What is going on, everybody? I hope you're having a great day today. This is Alex from the Fresh Fantasy Podcast. This is the fourth episode of season 3. Today, we're going to be talking about our top 10 overrated players, talking about guys like Deebo Samuel, A.J. Dillon, Nick Chubb, and why we believe they should be going lower than their ADP says. Joining me today to break this all down is a man of so many talents. He is the creator and CEO of Thirsty Thursdays. He is the co-host of the Football Guys Mailbag Show and is an analyst in one of the biggest fantasy platforms in the world. He is Yahoo's Troy King. Welcome to the show.
Yo, Alex, thank you so much for inviting me, man. It's been very overdue. I'm excited to have this conversation. Even though a lot of people are going to be mad at me for a lot of things I got to say, I'm very excited to chop it up with you today.
I agree, and I had you on because I know you have thicker skin, than some other people. I don't see you getting into too many battles, and you have to for an overrated players episode, because people will be coming for our necks after listening to this. There's going to be some players that people like that we're going to have to speak bad about, because when it's underrated, we're just making a case for everybody. It's harder to hate on it, but when we're hating on their players a little bit and overrated, that's definitely when people can get a little bit more antsy. Before we get into that real quick, I should know as your fellow coworker at Football Guys, but I unfortunately do not know. How did this whole Thirsty Thursday phenomenon start? Because it's taken a mind of its own. I look forward to every Thursday for all the memes and the GIFs, but how did this get started, if you could tell the people?
Of course, it's a great question. So last January 2021, everyone knows Thirsty Thursdays as being like a drinking holiday, right? Yeah. But like when I think of the word thirsty, I think of being thirsty for somebody, pursuing somebody, right? So me and my friend Linda Godfrey, we were kind of having this text debate, right? And then, I know it's a drinking holiday, but you know what? Let me put a poll up. Let me put this poll up just to see what Twitter thinks, right? I fully expected to lose this poll, but I just want to see what happens. So 82% of people agree that it was a drinking holiday, but the remainder was agreeing with me. And then it started. So after the poll results, people were just curious about this 18% of people that were voted against the consensus of drinking holiday. So it's what, who thinks it actually means this? And then after that, everyone just kept making jokes about my interpretation of Thirsty Thursdays. So then ever since then, every Thursday it's evolved since then. So now what I do is I make memes now about the most relevant, news, right? Like this week I made a Photoshop Deebo Samuel, right? Yep. Every Thursday. And I guess, I say, guess what day it is. And people just have a good time. And that's what it's about. Just being goofy, having fun. And every single Thursday, and, again, Thursday is a random day in the middle of the week. So I also like that too. Something to look forward to. It's a Friday.
No, it's cool that it's become a thing of its own, because losing my voice a little bit here. For myself, I don't tweet a ton on Twitter, and it's not something I interact with, but it's something that I legitimately, when I wake up on Thursdays and I go on Twitter, I know it's coming, and every day it brings a smile to my face. So props to you on that, and please keep it going, because I enjoy those memes every single time.
I feel like if I stopped it, people would get mad at me, so I'm gonna keep going until I can't anymore. So.
Got to keep the people happy, absolutely, but not going to really be able to keep the people super happy today doing top 10 most overrated players. So, Troy, we will start with you. Who is your first overrated player?
My first overrated player is Justin Fields. Now, before I get into the reasons why, right? Coming out of draft, I like Justin Fields. I think that he could be a star in this league. However, what he saw last year, we have not seen enough of the star potential, right? Yes. Everyone's going to talk about he has a rushing ability, right? We saw him demonstrate that a little bit last year. The problem was most of his games were abysmal. Let's be honest here. Watching him pass the football last year, and then I don't know if you want to blame him. I don't know if you want to blame Matt Nagy, but based off of his performance last year, I can't say that, because right now he's a top 12 dynasty quarterback. And I guess, people are basing it, he's going to be very improved going forward, which I expect him to be improved, but at the same time, I just don't want to give him that benefit of the doubt, because last year, again, it looked rough. He looked very rough. His passing numbers were terrible. I feel like he had a hard time reading the defenses. It was not pretty. Again, hopefully this new coaching staff, I want to be wrong, and I'm rooting for him. And I hope that he takes that step he needs to look like the franchise quarterback I believe that he could be. but I just don't believe just because he's a rushing quarterback that he automatically needs to be in the top 12 like dynasty QBs because he's young and he rushes the football. Like, nah, like you gotta show me that you are, good enough to warrant that value to me in dynasty. I believe he can, but I gotta see it.
Yeah, no, I think I think that is totally fair. But I don't know. I hesitate, and I think in dynasty more so than redraft. But I have this like affinity, for rushing quarterbacks, just because again we see with Jalen Hurts, we see with these guys. I mean, Jalen Hurts is probably the best example here of someone
Yeah.
that doesn't throw the ball great, but is still going to put up fantasy numbers. And I love Jalen Hurts. I think he throws the ball better than most people. But like with the bias of the people that let's say he doesn't throw the ball well, the fact that he's still able to consistently produce fantasy production while not throwing the ball well, similar to Cam Newton. And we saw some of the plays that Justin Fields made in the ground last year. I mean, so for that reason, I'm willing to buy into him a little bit more. But I think long term, there's definitely a little bit of a question. We don't know what this new coaching staff's going to look like. They're not giving him anybody with weapons when Cole Kmet will probably be second on the team in targets. I'm not hating on Cole Kmet. I'm just saying that as him ranked among all second options throughout the NFL, he's probably among the very lowest of them. And that doesn't really help Justin Fields' prospects. I think that's a fair pick, but I'm going to respectfully disagree just because of that rushing upside. But maybe we'll agree on my guy, Patrick Mahomes, for my first overrated player, starting off with a bang. He is the current QB3 right now in redraft. And I think the Tyreek Hill loss is going to be massive. He's only played 4 games in his entire career without Tyreek Hill. And even when he had Tyreek Hill, he's already overrated for fantasy. Yes, in 2018, Patrick Mahomes was the QB1, but he's the current QB3. In 2019, he was the QB7. 2020, he was the QB4. And last year, he was the QB4. And now he loses one of the best, most electric, game-changing weapons in the entire NFL, and you replace them with Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquise Valdes-Scantling. Those guys are still okay players in their own right, but they're never going to make up for what Tyreek Hill is like leaving in this offense. Travis Kelce's a year older. I don't expect him to lose much of a step, but considering that, he's being drafted where he's finished of the last 3 years, that concerns me a little bit. But you don't draft Patrick Mahomes to, have him and make sure he hits above his draft price. You just have to hope that he's Patrick Mahomes and he'll always be an automatic finish in the top 5. But with Tyreek Hill gone, I'm not so confident that he's going to be a top 5 QB this year. What do you think?
I understand your concerns. Your concerns are valid, but I disagree with you here that he's overrated. I mean, again, Patrick Mahomes is probably going to be good. Again, he's a good future Hall of Famer. Like he's incredible, right? And I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I believe that yes, losing Tyreek Hill isn't going to benefit your team at all. But I believe that he still have Travis Kelce. And then, we have guys like, Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Juju Smith-Schuster. And I'm assuming they're going to trade for a wide receiver. We'll see if that happens. Or they're going to draft one of these wide receivers in this upcoming class who, again, they're not going to be Tyreek Hill. But I believe that he can somewhat replicate Tyreek Hill's production, just more spread out, right? He's going to be utilizing – and his targets, I'm going to assume, are not going to be as concentrated, right? It's going to be Kelce. I think he's going to mix it around with these other guys. So we'll see if they trade for somebody or if they draft whoever they draft. But I believe that Patrick Mahomes is good enough that he's still going to win games. He's still going to score fantasy points. It might not look the same, but I believe he's still going to be able to perform at, I think, a top QB3 level or maybe higher. We'll see. But I believe that he'll be able to make up for it, even with the loss of Tyreek Hill. He'll just spread it around a little bit more. That's what I'm expecting.
And I think that's fair, but I think where I will, finish on this debate here is just that where he's going in drafts right now, he's going right above Terry McLaurin, Travis Etienne, Amari Cooper, and when you can get other quarterbacks that I expect to be have a very similar, floor or upside to, what Mahomes has. I'd personally rather, when building most of my teams, draft someone like Terry McLaurin or Travis Etienne that are going right next to, below, Patrick Mahomes in that range. But I think that's fair, for both sides. Let the people, decide what they think. But Troy, who is your number 4 overrated player? Or number
JJ
2?
Dillon.
Oh.
So AJ Dillon, and I know a lot of people aren't gonna like me, but here's the reason why, right? So, and again, his quads are great, right? And there's a lot of moments last year, especially towards the end of last year, where he looked good. He looked like a solid running back. But the biggest problem to me is, and I think everyone was expecting Aaron Jones to eventually move on, but they gave him that extension. Aaron Jones is still there. So to me, Aaron Jones, he's still the RB1 in that backfield, and he's by far he's the better pass catcher. And with the loss of Devontae Adams, I believe that's only going to benefit Aaron Jones even more. Like they're going to utilize him in the passing game even more. Again, like I joke around and say that right now, Aaron Jones, he was a wide receiver 2 in that offense, even when Devontae Adams was there. Now that he left, right now their wide receiver 1 is Allen Lazard. I'm expecting the Packers to draft a wide receiver, but to me, Aaron Rodgers is all about trust. And yes, I'm not saying he doesn't trust AJ Dillon. AJ Dillon is still going to be involved. I believe that he's going to be best utilized as a goal line back. He's a big body, running back, short yardage. I believe that that's where he will excel, maybe on first down, second down. But in fantasy, targets are more valuable than carries. And I believe that Aaron Jones is still going to demand a lot of targets in this offense. And again, I still think he's going to be the RB1 in that offense. So to me, I'm just skeptical about where AJ Dillon is going in draft solely because, again, Aaron Jones is still exists.
I think I would buy AJ Dillon more if Devontae Adams was still there. I think that him leaving definitely benefits Aaron Jones more than it does AJ Dillon, because Aaron Jones is more of the pass catcher, in this offense. So I think for that reason that I'm definitely going to I'd be buying, someone like Aaron Jones a little bit more because of the pass catching. But if Devontae Adams is there, I'd be like, okay, it looked like AJ Dillon might have been the better runner last year. I'd be buying him a little bit more. But I agree with you that at this point, like Aaron Jones is going to be the guy that benefits, and he might end up being on the field more because he's more of the passing down threat, even in running situations. So I think for that reason that, AJ Dillon is, dropping a little bit for me. And, maybe it's my own detriment of not getting these perfect guys that are going to still be getting like, at least 10 plus touches a week like AJ Dillon. But personally in that range, like I'd rather draft like someone that I really believe is going to, get meaningful work and that could actually be the star of an offense or star of the backfield, where I just don't think AJ Dillon is ever going to be that as long as Aaron Jones is there. So I'm with you, but I think that, again, people don't realize that if Devontae Adams was still there, I think I'd be buying AJ Dillon a little bit more than he is going right now. But another guy, and this is probably my next guy, my second guy, this is probably the one that I struggled with the most, and I feel like I could definitely get some hate for. And I think it's just mostly the timeline. It's not the player. It's just more of, what is next year going to look like and where he's going at cost. And that's Chris Godwin. I love Chris Godwin. He's going as the wide receiver 19 overall in redraft right now. These are half PPR, expert consensus rankings for Fantasy Pros, 49th overall. And we're not even sure if this guy's going to be back or healthy with week 1 right now with his ACL. And this is where people have him going. And I know there's not a lot of people, having drafts right now. And I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying the fact that he's even ranked, 49th overall, wide receiver 19, ahead of guys like Amari Cooper, Terry McLaurin, Brandon Cooks, Elijah Moore, and Allen Robinson. Those are all guys I would take over Chris Godwin right now. Do I think that Chris Godwin is a better player than all of those guys? I do. And I know he's playing with Tom Brady, and I know that Antonio Brown is gone, but we just do not know what it's going to be like for Chris Godwin coming off this ACL injury. And I know that, we've seen players succeed, but we've also seen players struggle. We've also seen players have setbacks. We've also seen players not have setbacks. So for that reason, I'm willing to buy one of those other guys right now over Chris Godwin because we just don't know what he's going to look like. And Chris Godwin can make me look stupid. You know what I mean? He could be back week 1. He could be the Chris Godwin that he's always been, and I look like an idiot. But I think for that reason, I'm going to be a little bit more risk averse right now and say I'd rather draft one of those guys ahead of Chris Godwin. Are you willing to take the risk? Do you believe in him as much as I believed in him in his breakout year, or are you feeling similar to where I'm feeling?
I mean, you can't ignore the injury, but I feel like once he's back, I feel like it's game over, right? We know the rapport with him and Tom Brady. We know that he's going to demand a high target share. I believe that I just don't, and I know they have Russell Gage now, and Russell Gage just to make it happen, like he's somebody should be targeting in drafts while Godwin is out. But once Godwin is healthy and back on that field, he's again wide receiver 1, high end wide receiver 2 at worst. So again, you can't ignore the injury, but I'm going to be optimistic. Drafting him where he's going though, I get it because he's not going to be able to play for you right away. So you're going to have to hold him on your bench. So I'm a little skeptical about that. But overall, again, once he's healthy and on the field, it's game over.
Maybe he's a value for that reason. You know what I mean? Maybe me just trying to be risk averse is, silly, for not getting him, and people should be buying him at wide receiver 19, knowing he's going to, probably finish above there. But that's just personally where I'd feel I'd rather draft one of those guys that I think, has similar upside, maybe not have a setback. But, again, but I hope, Chris Godwin is the wide receiver 1 overall this year. I hope he comes out of the ACL and, does what Cooper Kupp did. Because again, I'm a Patriots fan. I'll always love Tom Brady, and I always want to see him do well, and that means that Chris Godwin will be doing well as well. But again, conversation for another day. No one wants to hear about my Patriots fandom right now. Troy, who is your number 3 overrated player?
My number 3 overrated player, and I'm going to get hate for this, is Rashad Bateman. And the reason why is so the thing about Rashad Bateman, right? And I was a huge Rashad Bateman fan coming into last season. And he had okay games, and obviously he dealt with that injury. He was out for a few weeks in the beginning of the season. He came back, but it was very obvious the way the offense looked that Rashad Bateman is the number 3 option on the team, right? Yeah. Mark Andrews, I believe, is the number 1 option. Hollywood Brown's the second. Rashad Bateman's the third. So the Ravens, they threw a lot more last year than most people were expecting compared to years past where there's been run. And I think a lot of that had to do with their running backs are just super old or just not great. So this year, how's the offense going to look? Is it going to be more balanced? Is it going to be, are they going to go back to the run heavy scheme once J.K. Dobbins is healthy, or do they bring in someone like, rumored Melvin Gordon might come? So do they run the ball more? Who knows? But again, even if they look like last year, are we expecting Rashad Bateman to make that jump at least to the number 2 option? I don't know. Again, he's very talented. This is not a knock on his talent or anything. It's just I'm a little bit concerned about consistent target share. And then he's wide receiver 41 right now, right? But he's going ahead of guys like Michael Gallup, Chase Claypool. Like Michael Gallup, he's also dealing with an injury, but when he comes back, I'd rather have Michael Gallup than Rashad Bateman. I'd rather have Chase Claypool than Rashad Bateman just because of that upside in that offense, even with Trubisky. So that's why I'm a little skeptical, right? Like what he did last year, we didn't see a huge sample size. Like he looked okay some games, and I know there was a lot of Tyler Huntley involved, but I just need to see it first. I just don't see him making himself that wide receiver 2 in this offense just yet.
But Troy, didn't you hear that they've been eating dinner together like every night this offseason? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I agree with you. And I think that I want to disagree with you really badly here. I want to be like Rashad Bateman's the man, which I think he is. I think he's a phenomenal talent. I think he's underrated as how people view him. But unfortunately, he has to play with Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews, who are 2 other guys that I absolutely love. And in every, metric we measure them, and in, fantasy Twitter and all these really smart people seem to really believe in Mark Andrews and Marquise Brown. And I think this is I'm going to say this is not really fair because the quarterback situation is different, but something like I'm going to call it Noah Fant syndrome, where you see a player that is just ultra talented that in any other world would be breaking out right now, but just can't because of their situation. I know it's quarterback play for Noah Fant, but I'm just saying that because he's playing with someone as talented as Marquise Brown, and I think Marquise Brown is severely underrated, and playing with someone as talented as Mark Andrews, that's going to hurt Rashad Bateman to ever, be that really great number 3 guy. And he's going to take that, back seat, unfortunately. And I think Bateman is going to have some big games this year, but I think that he's going to be something similar to, what we saw from Michael Gallup, so often in Dallas, where he's going to be the number 3 guy, and, he's going to have his big games here and there, but they're going to be fewer and far between, but you will clearly see the talent there, as badly as we want to see that breakout. So I'm with you on Rashad Bateman. I think that is definitely, I agree, but I really hope that someday that Rashad Bateman could break out. This is my next guy, my number 3 guy, is another one that I know people like, but I know he also let people down, in their fantasy football playoffs last year. I made a TikTok about this player, and man, the comments, when I said this guy was overrated after the season, he was a bust, people were flaming this guy for the playoffs and how much he killed them and everything like that. So maybe people will agree right now, but that's Dawson Knox. Dawson Knox, the current tight end 9 right now, even though he was the tight end 9 in points per game last year. He was the tight end 9 in points per game, and he's going as the tight end 9 now. And last year, he was second in the NFL in touchdowns. He was 20th in targets last year as the tight end 9, 22nd in target share, 18th in receptions. But the reason that he was so good in fantasy was his 18.4% touchdown rate. That is a touchdown on almost one of every 5 targets. And like the thing is, it's not like it's one thing, Troy, if we see Dawson Knox and he has this like 30% red zone target share. And it's just like whenever they get in there, Josh Allen's throwing it to him. Dawson Knox's target share was lower in the red zone than it was in the field. He had a 17% target share in the red zone. Like, it's not like they were just throwing to this guy every time and he had a lot of touchdowns. Like, this was just pure luck last year for a guy that was 20th in targets. His target share was higher outside the red zone than it was inside the red zone. He is bound for regression. Troy, I will not accept anything less. We have to agree here that this man is very overrated.
It's hard to disagree. And I like Dawson Knox, but it's just, again, and I'm going to save it because, another person on my list, it's similar, but again, it's the touchdowns aren't a sticky stack, right? Like, look, he scored a bunch of touchdowns. That's the reason, again, why we're even talking about him. And it's just, again, he helped you for fantasy for most of the year. And I know with tight ends overall, they're just unpredictable. But this next season, I don't know. I mean, he's going to be a red zone. He's going to be one of the red zone targets, but Gabe Davis, he might take a step up. He might be more a red zone target. Look, he's going to, and also Diggs, I believe he kind of regressed a little bit in the touchdown department because Dawson Knox kept stealing all of them. So Diggs could, they just paid Diggs. Maybe Josh Allen's going to look more towards him, and we'll see about the running back situation. Like, there's so many factors that could change next year. So as of right now, it's hard to disagree with you about he's a little overrated.
I think so. And it's like, people think that I say overrated means I hate the player. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I want everyone to succeed. I like Dawson Knox's hair. I'm happy for him on the Bills, but it's not like a lot has changed. Like, they lost Emmanuel Sanders, but like, someone else is going to pick up that target share. And I should have, what? I think the one player I'm missing from this list, like, I don't want to get into this now. I'm not prepared to talk about him, but Gabriel Davis should have been number 1 on my list. I think fantasy Twitter is a little bit more on him. And we get into a quick argument here, but man, the Gabriel Davis has not exceeded the 12% target share in each of his first 2 years. He does not have a lot of competition. Like, come on, man. Like, I get that Gabriel Davis is an insane playoff game, but like, this guy couldn't get ahead of Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley, and Isaiah McKenzie. Like, why is he all of a sudden going to do it in year 3?
So here's the thing about Gabe Davis, right? I'm a Gabe Davis truther, but I've been a Gabe Davis because I'm a UCF alum. Gabe Davis, he went to UCF, so I've been a fan of his for quite some time.
Fair.
So the fact that I never expected to even be this relevant, that we could even be talking about him being overrated when he first came out, right? I was just happy. Like, he's a big body guy, he's athletic. Like, I like Gabe Davis, but all the arguments against him, like, it's hard to disagree. You're right. Like, we just don't see consistency. And he had and he gets a lot of touchdowns, right? He makes a lot of big plays. The only thing we're missing is consistency, consistent target share. And I don't know if he's going to get that this upcoming year, but this is a quick thing. I hope he does as a fan of his, but we need to see that before we start like propelling him a little bit too high. So I agree with you there.
And that's purely the argument. It's just that I think we're propelling him a little bit too high. And like, I just looked at him, like, man was 87th in target share. Like, I get that he was like, like, he's basically, Jerry Rice on stilts, but like seriously, people, like I get it. I know he had a great playoff game. I know that was, phenomenal for him. And, maybe I'm just stupid and I should be paying attention because last year I was off Leonard Fournette after his playoff run. I was like, Ronald Jones is still the guy. And, we all know how that one ended now. But again, Gabriel Davis, I'm sorry, but to me, you're a little overrated. But Troy, I feel for you, UCF alum, you always want to root for those guys. But Troy, who is your number 4 overrated player, your second to last player on this list for today?
Boy, yeah, a lot of people are not gonna like this, but it's Tony Pollard, man. Tony Pollard is one of the guys that's ridiculously hyped. He's running back 33 in terms of Fantasy Pros half PPR rankings. But Tony Pollard, the thing about Tony Pollard is that what people have to be reminded of is that he's not the running back 1 in this offense. Like, people can talk about how washed Zeke is, till the cows come home, right? Did he always look great last year? No, but you know what? He's the one that they paid, and he's also the one that's built to be the workhorse. Tony Pollard isn't built to be the workhorse. They're never going to use him as the workhorse, right? He never topped 15 carries at all last season, as well as he only, and the thing about Tony Pollard, why he was so good for fantasy, is that he was extremely efficient. When he had the ball in his hand, he had juice. He looked great. But the problem is he doesn't have enough volume. And if you don't have the volume, it's hard to rely on incredible efficiency if you're not getting consistent volume. And that was kind of like, and just kind of segueing here, Cordell Patterson, eventually he started getting the volume and he started becoming consistent. But early last year, like Cordell Patterson, for example, he had crazy, insane games with not a lot of volume, right? Like Mike Davis, for example, was like out carrying him, out targeting him, and all that. So again, it helps you for fantasy, but if you're going to be chasing that into next year, like, are we projecting Tony Pollard to get more volume? I don't believe so. As long as Zeke is around, he's the RB1 in this offense. So I'm just skeptical. He's a third down back. He's a third down back. He's kind of like Alexander Madison, right? With Dalvin Cook. He gets mixed in, but he was just more efficient than Alexander Madison in a way. So that's why I'm just a little bit skeptical of him coming into this year.
I'm gonna have to disagree here. And before, anyone starts screaming and throwing their phone at the wall, because like I just said that, I don't like these guys like AJ Dillon that aren't getting a lot of touches. AJ Dillon is going above like Michael Carter, Miles Sanders, Devin Singletary, Rashad Penny, Kareem Hunt. Like he's going ahead of all those guys. Tony Pollard is not. Like Tony Pollard's the running back 33. The guys that are, falling off right behind him are Ramondre Stevenson, Melvin Gordon for now, James Robinson, Cordero Patterson, Ronald Jones. I might take over him, but like, I don't know. I think on this one that I actually like, where Pollard is going. And I agree with you. They like, I don't think that he's going to, all of a sudden, take over this workhorse role and, outsnap Zeke or anything like that, because I'm more of a Zeke truther. I don't think any of that, but I actually like where he's going. Not only because he is going to get mixed in for touches for some points every game. You don't love that, but I think just the potential, if something were to happen to Zeke, who's been like the least injured running back, well, not least injured, but like Zeke doesn't miss games. I mean, he's Iron Man out there, and respect to Zeke for doing that. But, where Pollard is going right now, I just don't see anyone like, again, he's running back 33, Stevenson's 34, Robinson's 36, Patterson's 37, Chris Carson's 40. I just don't see any of those guys that get me more excited about their potential than Tony Pollard. And maybe I'm just like over handcuffing here with Tony Pollard. Like, what value is he really going to bring? But I don't know, for the potential in that range, he's someone I think I'm willing to buy in that can at least get me a few points every week. So do you have any, like, are there any guys, sorry, let me say this real quick before we move on. I don't know if you have the list right now, but any of those guys that I just mentioned going below him, would you be taking? Chris Carson's also in that list. Like, who would you be taking over Tony Pollard to make him overrated here?
So Chris Carson, for me, and that depends on health, right? If Chris Carson's ready to go, I'm definitely taking him over. I think the thing that made me, what stood out to me, respectfully, and even though it's Chase Edmonds going one spot ahead of Tony Pollard, right? Chase Edmonds is the RB1 in this Mike Daniels offense, which we're expecting to be a high-powered offense, right? To me, I believe that there should be more of a gap between Chase Edmonds, the RB1 of this new look Miami Dolphins offense, and Tony Pollard, who's, again, the third down back for Dallas. And again, he looked efficient. So to me, that gap is way too close. And Alexander Madison, he's RB 37. I think he should be closer to that. If he was like RB 36 or around that range, or 37, 38, I feel like he should be in that range. But again, him and Chase Edmonds being one spot away from each other, that's what's bothering me.
Okay, I think that's fair. I think there should be a giant tier gap, because like the four guys above, on Tony Pollard on the other side are Chase Edmonds, Kareem Hunt, Rashad Penny, Devin Singletary. I wouldn't be drafting Tony Pollard near any of those guys. So I think there should be a massive tier gap there as well. But I think with the guys going after him, I think that's more. But again, I'm curious. I don't know off the top of my head, and I'm sorry for not having this, but the overall, there should definitely be a very big gap between Edmonds and Pollard. But I do think that Pollard is the next tier of that. But we will let that be that and let the people figure out what they think. My number 2 on this list, and this player before this whole trade fiasco, with San Francisco, would have already made this list. But it's Deebo Samuel. And maybe like this is like Derrick Henry syndrome where every year like I just want like them to not, be great in fantasy just because like I want to be right. And I've never been a believer in Debo Samuel, and shame on me after last year. But Debo Samuel is going as the wide receiver 6, whether he's in San Francisco or somewhere else. But last year he was 21st in targets, 21st in receptions. Like he did have 8 rushing touchdowns on 59 carries. And I think their offense is going to change a lot with Trey Lance if he stays there, but where he goes somewhere else, what is that going to look like? We don't know. But I think one of the surprising things about Debo Samuel, and I know that his rushing stuff was great, but probably the most interesting stat I pulled out when working on the show sheet for this podcast was that Debo Samuel was 41st in routes run. And I know that isn't anything because Debo's a talent, and when he's going to be on the field running those routes, like they're going to be throwing him the ball more. He doesn't run as many routes as everyone else. Like I understand that. But the fact that this man was 41st in routes run, going as a borderline like top 15 pick, in redraft leagues is just absurd to me. And I think that, honestly, it might help him, going somewhere else where maybe his target share is a little bit higher. He's not competing, with Brandon Ayuk or George Kittle. He'll probably have a better, like, for sure quarterback or a little bit of more known commodity than Trey Lance. I believe in Trey Lance, but if he's not, that doesn't help him as much, for what they play him as the Debo Samuel role in San Francisco. So I don't know, but still for me, because of the usage, overall usage last year and his ultra efficiency, I'm going to be fading Debo Samuel a little bit, but I also understand like it's Debo Samuel. He's probably the most efficient player on earth. So where do you stand on him?
So the way I feel about Debo is that it sounds like he's going to be leaving San Francisco, which to me is by far the best place for his fantasy point wise for him, right? Because obviously we know how he was used last year. They force fed him touches in the backfield, and as a wide receiver, he was hyper targeted and hyper used in that offense. Anywhere he goes, unless it's like somewhere like Green Bay and they just treat him like Devontae Adams, I don't know if they're going to. There's a landing spot where they're going to force feed him touches. And it's been made clear that he doesn't want to be that wide back. He just wants to be a wide receiver, which he's fine. He's still going to be good as just a pure wide receiver. But so I will say that he's overrated in the sense that he's leaving San Francisco and his destination is unknown. So I'll say he's overrated due to that fact, because I don't think that he's going to produce the same numbers as he did last year. I wouldn't say he was going to produce those same numbers anyway, even if he stayed in San Francisco. But now, like, what is he going to produce somewhere else is a big question mark. So I'll tentatively agree because of the way you broke it down. I feel that's fair.
But it's funny that we also disagree in the sense that I was more like him being in San Francisco next year is where I would say he's overrated more with the weapons that he has, the new quarterback.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just me there, but we can agree to disagree as we move on to our final player. Troy, who is your final overrated player for the day?
Oh man, if everyone didn't hate me already, I guess they're gonna hate me for this one. It's Pat Freiermuth, y'all. And here's the thing: I like Pat Freiermuth, and just like Alex has been saying, like I don't. It's not that I hate any of these guys, so don't not hear what I'm saying. But the thing about Pat Freiermuth, right, is that the reason why he was so good is similar to the Dawson Knox syndrome. He scored 7 touchdowns. That's the reason why he was so good in fantasy. And again, when you're a tight end in fantasy, all you really got to do, if you score touchdowns, is really all you're asked to do, because he only topped 50 yards twice last year. And his target share was very inconsistent. There are plenty of games last year we only saw a maximum of 4 targets. He just happened to score a touchdown, and that's what saved your fantasy, week. But and here's the thing. I will make a caveat. Right now, he's in terms of the Fantasy Pro rankings, he's tight end 12, which is not that crazy, but in my opinion, that's not going to last. I see he's going to be creeping up that board. Tight end 12 isn't going to stay. I believe he's probably going to end up being somewhere like tight end 7, tight end 8 when it's all said and done. But at this very moment, he's going to get ahead of guys like Mike Gesicki. I like Mike Gesicki better, especially with that new look offense. I'm not saying he's going to be treated like George Kittle, but I just like the potential. I know Miami has a bunch of weapons, but I like Mike Gesicki. Cole Kmet, to me, him and Cole Kmet are more comparable. And Cole Kmet is tight end 15. So I feel like Pat Fryermuth should be somewhere in that range. Even Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry, like he was kind of touchdown dependent as well. He's tied in 14. Like to me, you can make an argument for any of those guys being, better than Pat Fryermuth. Again, it's Trubisky. I don't know if you're a Trubisky believer or you're a hater, but I'm not a huge believer in Mitch Trubisky. And how much is he going to hyper target Pat Fryermuth in the red zone like Big Ben did? I have no idea. I'm not sure. Maybe those touches in the red zone, maybe they're going to go to Najee or, again, Deontay, Chase Claypool. Like, I just don't know. And again, I don't have much faith in Trubisky. And I think that's another reason why I'm a little bit down on Pat Fryermuth. So that's how I feel. He's my, I guess, number one, but I hope I'm wrong because I really like the guy. He's extremely talented. It's just how much volume is he going to get? How much consistent targets? And what is the QB play going to look like in that offense?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that he's, like if Big Ben was still there, I'd actually like him more than Dawson Knox, because he actually has a higher target share. It was only 14%, which is terrible. But the biggest difference is he had a 23% red zone target share last year. I mean, like that was what I was talking about with Dawson Knox. Like when Pat Fryermuth gets into the red zone, they actually do look for him and his target share increases. But you know who else this does? Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry has a 14% target share, higher than Fryermuth's 13%. And Hunter Henry had a 23.6% target share in the red zone.
Crazy.
That's what you're looking for instead of Pat Fryermuth. And I think, like you said, where Pat Fryermuth is going, I'd rather wait and just grab Hunter Henry. Yep. I know Hunter Henry doesn't look as cool. He's not as pretty as Pat Fryermuth. He doesn't play, for the Steelers that are one of the best fantasy offenses, of the last decade. But I think that like Hunter Henry is just a less sexy version of Pat Fryermuth that I'd rather wait and be able to take. I think Cole Kmet's another guy I would take over Fryermuth. So I think for that reason, like I think Pat Fryermuth is like, yeah, I agree. I think he's a little bit overrated. I don't have a lot to disagree with here because I think there's so many options you could rather just wait on and, grab another, grab Tony Pollard and then grab, Hunter Henry a little later. I'm just kidding. I'm just fighting. I'm just fighting.
That was a good one, though.
But, again, I agree that, Pat Fryermuth, I'd rather just wait a little bit longer to go for a different tight end. But my number one, a guy that I've taken a lot of heat for, over the last, but I feel justified. Is Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb to me is a little bit overrated. In half PPR right now, he's going as the running back 9. But here's the problem, okay? Before you, again, scream at me or throw your phone or whatever you got to do to get your anger out, Nick Chubb is going as the player 13 overall. 13 overall, okay? Like 13 overall. Get that through your thick skull. But he's never finished higher than the running back 8. Like that's the whole argument right there. Nick Chubb has also never finished lower than running back 17. But I'm not drafting my running back 13 overall player to like be like a guaranteed top 15 pick. That's not what the guy's for. When you're drafting a guy at the first pick of round 2, you're drafting them because they have like the running back 1 or wide receiver 1 or the number 1, overall position in their range of outcomes. Nick Chubb has not finished, the running back 7. He's never finished higher than the running back 7. He's only averaged 1.8 targets per game over the last 2 years. So why on earth are you drafting a guy 13th overall if he has almost zero shot at top 5 unless the best handcuff in all of Fantasyland gets hurt? It's not a knock on talent. It's purely situation, his role, and it's fantasy football. I think Nick Chubb might be the most talented running back in the entire NFL. But just because he doesn't catch a lot of passes and just because the fact that he has never finished top 5 if Kareem Hunt is there, I will not be taking him 13th overall. That is way too early for me. I get you drafting him for consistency and for team building, but I think that player for me has to be a guy that has the number 1 overall in the range of outcomes without an injury having to happen. Do you agree with me here, or are you like Nick Chubb all the way?
I feel like I don't know if there's a way to agree with some points and disagree with some points, but that's pretty much where I'm at with you. Like the thing about Nick Chubb is that his ability, and I don't need to tell people how good he is, but I feel like his ability that his athletic, because he could take it to the house from any point of the field, right? And I think like just that alone, like there's only so many running backs in this league that just have that ability. And then again, just consistency. The main reason people don't like Nick Chubb is, like you mentioned, simply because he doesn't catch a lot of passes. Even when Kareem Hunt was hurt, Dearness Johnson is the one that they use on like third downs. I don't understand why they just don't use Nick Chubb on third downs. Like, is he I feel like he's not that bad at catching the football. Apparently, Cleveland thinks he is, but that's the only thing. It's like he's just like a little less. He's a little worse than Derrick Henry, right? You got Derrick Henry somehow. It's about the efficiency, right? Like not needing passing work, but being able to take it to the house or getting the volume in order to score fantasy points. So Nick Chubb, where he's going, I don't. It's like I don't mind it, right? Do I think it's overrated? I don't necessarily think it's overrated. I don't think he's underrated. I feel like that's a fair spot for me where he's going. So that's how I feel about it.
I don't know. I'm gonna hugely disagree here. I just again like I get what you're saying, and I think that it's just talent syndrome. I think people are willing to draft him because of how talented he is at that point, and I get that like he can take it to the house at any play. And here's the thing, Troy, he has taken it to the house on almost any play and still can't finish higher than the running back 7. You know, we like it's not like he's like just like not like getting tackled, like ankle tackled at the 1 yard line over and over again. Like he's getting all the goal line carries you could ask for. He's consistently taking plays to the house, and he's still not finishing as a top 5 running back purely because of Kareem Hunt and some of the passing work that is being taken from him. I agree with you that he should be on the field 99% of the snaps, even though that's dangerous, and that he should be getting the ball every play because that makes their team better. But I don't know. I don't think he can do it unless Kareem Hunt gets hurt. But I hope
Wait,
not.
I will say one thing. I will
Go
say
ahead.
one thing, right? So
Please.
I'm looking at this list, and somebody is going ahead of him. Where I guess I could add him as an honorary mention for overrated. Is Javonte Williams, man? Javonte Williams is RB8. That's ridiculously high. Like, listen, he looked good last year, but I feel like it's not like he's out of the woods yet with Melvin Gordon, right? Like
Yeah.
Melvin Gordon could still re-sign. I'm saying even if he has the backfield to himself, I feel like RB8 is still really high. Like, yeah, he looked good last year and he had that one good game, but he had the whole backfield to himself. But RB8 is a little high. Like to me, I feel like RB12 is more like reasonable in my opinion. So that's one thing that stood out. Like I rather Nick Chubb at this moment in time than Javonte Williams.
And I also, at this moment in time, would also agree. Until Melvin Gordon signs, I would also, again, you've heard me say how much I hate Nick Chubb, and I love Javonte Williams. I hope that he's the greatest running back in NFL history, you know, when his career is over. But I think right now, considering Melvin Gordon, I feel like the longer time goes on, the more likely he's just going to re-sign with Denver.
That's what it seems like. I feel like if he's going to move on, he would have done it already.
Yeah, I agree. And if Melvin Gordon comes back, as much as we'd love to see Javonte, you know, unlocked, like Melvin Gordon was still really great last year, and I don't think he'll ever truly be. So I agree. I'm willing to take Nick Chubb over him right now. But Troy, we have one final question, my favorite question on this fantasy football podcast. And that question is, who is your 2022 flag plant? Your boldest prediction that you believe in this year. Who is that player?
It's James Conner. James Conner, how he looked last year. One, if you got him last year, he was an absolute steal for you. And I believe he's going to be top 5. Like James Conner, the fact that he re-signed, because we knew that the Cardinals were either going to pick Chase Edmonds or James Conner to re-sign back with him, and they picked James Conner. And they gave him a solid amount of money. And no matter who they bring in, unless it's, again, I don't expect them to bring anyone like Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker. I don't see that happening. So there's no other running back in this class to me that's going to threaten his RB1 position on the team. And we saw he got a lot of volume last year. Like we've seen him plenty of games with over 20 carries. Like, and again, he got the goal line work. He got the goal line work, and there's plenty of games where he got a decent amount of targets out of the backfield. And that high-powered offense. And yesterday, it sounds like Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are going to find some way to give him his money. So he's going to stay. And I know he's been dealing with injuries, but with Kyler as your quarterback, the way the offense is, with James Conner as the RB1 without a caliber of running back like Chase Edmonds, like I just don't see how, again, top 5 is my bold prediction, but he's a locked and loaded RB1. I feel like he's locked and loaded at least RB, top 7, top 8, but I'm going to say top 5. I'm just so excited. And again, he's going as RB17. He's going to RB17, people. Like, again, Cam Akers is going ahead of him. Like, even Aaron Jones is going ahead of him. I know I was talking about Aaron Jones before, but I'm like, listen, give me James Conner, man. Like, I'll scoop up that value all day.
I like it. And I think that, like, I'm a former, James Conner hater, just because I thought he was always injured. But like on the flip side of his injuries, I mean, James Conner's played at least 13 games in 4 of his 5 seasons. I just pulled that up. Like, if you're going to get a running back that has an 80% chance to play at least 13 games, I'm taking that every day of the week, with anybody. I don't care if I'm taking Jonathan Taylor. If he's guaranteed to play at least 13 games or an 80% chance of it, like, I'm taking that, all day. So I think that he's a little bit better than that. But I agree. Like, I mean, this guy was like running back 4 or 5 in points per game last year, I think. Like, he was just ridiculous, and people love to fade him. And I think the other thing is the fact that when James Conner and Edmonds shared the field, Edmonds averaged 12 touches a game last year. 12 touches. Unless they draft, like one of those crazy like Breece Hall or a really high running back, which I don't think they will. Like they have someone like Benjamin that they can have to have that fill-in role. Like no one else is going to be getting 12 touches a game walking into that offense. I don't think they're going to draft someone more talented than Chase Edmonds to take away carries from Connor. They just gave Connor a fat deal, and I think they're going to feed him. I don't think they're going to give him a deal and then, hold him back a little bit. Same thing with Zeke. They're paying him, but they're not trying to keep him healthy. They're, trying to run him into the ground. So I love the James Conner pick. I think he was like my number 1 or number 2 most underrated player on my past episode before this. So again, I love James Conner pick. And Troy, I love having you on this show. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you today. I really appreciate you coming on. Before we get out of here, though, is there anything you want to share with the listeners? Anything you got to say? Anything you want to plug? Anything like that at all?
I would just say, y'all just follow me. You can find me at T King Mode on Twitter. That's my home base. But if you want to follow me in places like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, you could use the same handle, T King Mode. Yeah, you can find my work at Yahoo in season and off season. You can find it with football guys. I just appreciate everybody supporting me. And Alex, thank you so much again for inviting me on.
Absolutely. Well, Troy, it's been a pleasure. And like you said, people go follow Troy. Troy is such a fun follow, giving you the hard-hitting analysis that you dream of, on Twitter, on TikTok, and all these things. But I think you're also up there with some of the most fun, like people to follow. Like you keep things lighthearted. You're one of the few people that is never in a Twitter disagreement or going off
I
on
don't got time for that.
Joe Schmo 3947. Like you're never involved in that, and I also respect that because it's not easy. And sometimes I don't get involved in it, but I will admit that I do get flustered, from time to time with some of the people that say things. But go follow Troy on Twitter, especially at T King Mode. 14,000 followers and counting. I think when I first followed you, I think you were only at around like 4,000 or 5,000. So you've made such a leap. Everything you have is well deserved, Troy. It's been a pleasure having you today. But for you listeners, thank you so much for listening to the Fresh Fantasy Podcast today. As always, please leave a review. You guys already know what to do, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.